Hi there, this is Solid Films, and welcome to part 7 of my Satyajit Ray season. And today's film is from 1962, and it's Abhijan, or The Expedition, or The Adventure. This is a Eureka Massive Cinema DVD, number 27. This has pretty good print, considering a lot of Satyajit Ray films don't have very good prints. It also comes with a nice booklet with a very nice picture of the man himself, and this has an interview with Wahida Rehman, who at the time was a major Bollywood star, and I think this was her first I don't want to say proper film, but her first fully international cinematic release. And there's also a very good essay on Ray. Again, some nice images in the booklet. So this is a film, again, with a simple story. It stars Sumitra Chatterjee, again Ray's regular leading man, and Wahida Rehman, who was big in Bollywood at the time, and it also was the first film with Aaron Roy, who would appear in quite a lot of Ray films after this, including Days and Nights in the Forest. So it's about a man whose wife's left him, and he's a taxi driver, and he has a 1930s Chrysler that he drives, and he ends up getting fired for some reckless driving, so he ends up going up north to where his relatives are from, and he kind of makes friends with people, gets involved with a merchant who's a bit shady, and gets involved with two women, one of which is a local school teacher, and the other one is a woman who was sold into prostitution. And it's essentially about the kind of moral choices you make, as he is kind of dangled a partnership in having his own taxi company by this merchant, only if he starts delivering opium, which is put into tins of ghee. For those who don't know, it's essentially butter. Yeah, and whether to do that or not. Again, it's a simple story, there's not a lot of plot in it, but again, with Ray, it's about beautiful compositions, it's about characters that you care about, and you root for. And again, I wouldn't say this is Ray's best film, but it's hugely enjoyable, and you end up at the end of it saying that was really good. It has a lot of Ray's kind of common themes. So obviously trains make an appearance, as they do in quite a lot of his films, but the bigger issues are the old world against the new world. The whole thing about learning English is a way of getting respect or earning respect. There's a whole thing about Christianity coming more and more into India and into the countryside versus the old religions of Hinduism and Islam. And there's a whole thing about the caste system. Obviously India has its own class system. So this is actually a film about the lower classes as far as taxi drivers and things like that. And even within there, it's the relationship between taxi drivers and bus drivers, and obviously those merchants and the people that own the taxi companies. As usual, it's a great performance by Sumitra Chatterjee, who has a big bushy beard in this one, because his character is has a lineage to the warrior class, which I guess, and for a Japanese parallel, it would essentially be ancestors of samurai. But he has a identity crisis as far as, having self-loathing and not being able to live up to that lofty lineage, if you will. Again, it's a film about relationships. He has a relationship with the school teacher, which he thinks is one thing, but it actually turns out to be something else. And then the prostitute, who just initially just wants to stay in the same poorly furnished room as he does, just to get away from her owners. That kind of relationship starts off rockily, but then changes as the film progresses. Speaking of rocks, there's a couple of rocks that feature in the film and feature on the cover of the DVD. It's two rocks, one's called the uncle and one is called the nephew. The school teacher makes a comment about it at the start, about the rock underneath is supposed to be, it's about the wages of sin, and the huge rock is the punishment for your sins. And another character who is friends with the school teacher, he fell off the rocks as a kid, who now walks with a limp. It's the second most interesting rock formation behind Picnic at Hanging Rock, I would say. Interestingly, apparently this film may have been a slight inspiration for Taxi Driver by Scorsese. Scorsese likes Satyajit Ray. Who doesn't? That's a rhetorical question. There might have been some influence over Taxi Driver as far as Sumitra Chatterjee's character, with the moral choices he has to make, as far as, do you take the money essentially and become a partner in a slightly shady taxi company, and alienate your friends, or do you theoretically live free, but not making a lot of money and scraping from day to day? So again, like I said at the top of this video series, Satyajit Ray makes films that are deceptively simple. The stories are never convoluted. The stories are fairly simple, but it's just his skill as a craftsman that technically they look beautiful. His compositions are always wonderful. This film actually has like car chases in it and a huge brawl, which you don't see very often in Ray films. And again, it's because the characters, you immediately kind of care about them and root for them, and you want to see what happens to them. This is kind of the first film also, and certainly in this 7-part series so far, that Ray actually has kind of baddies, kind of has villains. In his other films, there's people that might be misguided, and then they cause things to happen to other people, but they don't really do it on purpose. It's through their own kind of arrogance or hubris or misunderstanding of a situation. That's how people get hurt in other films, but in this film, this is his first kind of characters who are just plain bad people, and the merchants and his spurious sidekicks. Yeah, again, perhaps not the first Satyajit Ray film I would recommend to people, but I would certainly hunt it down if you've been kind of interested in Satyajit Ray, or if you've seen the Apu trilogy and the Music Room, which are more accessible as far as being able to get a copy. I would certainly recommend picking up Abhijan. It's 146 minutes, but it doesn't actually seem that way, which is always a good thing. Yeah, another really good Satyajit Ray film. So on that bombshell, I'll stop the video here. So thank you very much for watching. Please let me know in the comments below if you've seen Abhijan, and hopefully we'll see you for part 8 of the Satyajit Ray season. This is Satyajit saying farewell, and I hope you have a good weekend.